Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today is 75.3 degrees, with a low of 54.7, so expect a mild fall day with comfortable temps for getting out and about. Coming up, we'll examine how certain off-year elections are hinting at potential weaknesses in the Republican dominance under Trump, and unpack the reasons California rejected Huntington Beachs' push for voter identification requirements. Plus, other key developments from around the nation and world. All this and more on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, folks. Today, November 4th, 2025, voters across the country are heading to the polls for these crucial off-year elections, serving as early indicators for the political landscape after President Trump's Republican sweep last year. Joining me from the studio to break it all down is our political reporter, Ethan. Ethan, what makes these races so pivotal right now?
Absolutely, Grace. These contests are like the first ripple in a pond after a big splash, signaling how Democrats might push back against the Republican trifecta controlling the White House, Senate, and a slim House majority. According to reporting from The Hill by Caroline Vakil yesterday and NPR staff this morning with affiliates like KQED, WNYC, and 1YMU, we're seeing gubernatorial races, mayoral battles, judicial retentions, a special congressional election, and ballot measures on redistricting. Issues like affordability, crime, and responses to Trump's policies are front and center, with polls opening early today and closing this evening in most places. Early voting and mail-in ballots have already shown strong turnout, per the Associated Press.
Fascinating. Let's start with Virginia, which seems like a real battleground. Tell us about the governor's race there.
Virginia is the marquee event, Grace, with voters deciding the governorship, lieutenant governorship, attorney general, and all 100 House of Delegates seats. The Democrats hold a narrow 51-48 majority in the House, and Republicans are gunning to flip it for veto-proof control, which could reshape redistricting and social policies. In the governor's matchup, former Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, a moderate with national security experience, faces Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears, who is succeeding term-limited Governor Glenn Youngkin. The Hill cites Decision Desk HQ polls showing Spanberger leading 53% to 43%, focusing on rising living costs and opposing Trump's federal workforce cuts. Earl Sears counters with crime reduction, tax cuts, and conservative stances like bans on transgender students in girls' sports and bathrooms. A Spanberger win would make her Virginia's first female governor, while Earl Sears' victory would be historic as the first black woman governor in our nation's history. NPR, drawing from WAMU, calls this a national referendum, noting the party out of the White House usually loses Virginia in off years, giving Democrats an edge in this purple state where Kamala Harris won by just 6 points last year.
Historic possibilities all around. How about the other statewide races in Virginia?
The Attorney General race is nail-biting, with Democratic challenger Jay Jones, a former state delegate, trailing incumbent Republican Jason Miyares 47-45% in the Hill polls. Jones apologized for some controversial 2022 text messages where he threatened violence against a Republican lawmaker and called his family little fascists, but has tying Miyares to Trump. For lieutenant governor, it's a dead heat between Republican John Reed, who is gay, and Democrat Ghazala Hashmi, complicated by allegations of a social media account linked to Reed sharing explicit content, which he denies as discriminatory. Turnout among key demographics is a concern in this divided state.
Shifting east to New Jersey, what's at stake in their governor's election?
New Jersey is succeeding term-limited Democratic Governor Phil Murphy, and it's a test of the state's blue lean amid recent cracks. Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, a former Navy pilot, leads Republican Jack Schiattarelli 50-46% per The Hill, campaigning on affordability and criticizing Republican federal freezes on projects like the Hudson River Tunnel under Trump. Schiattarelli, who narrowly lost in 2021, blasts Democratic governance on utility costs and property taxes, with Trump giving him tele-campaign boosts. NPR via WNYC reports Cheryl got a lift from a rally with former President Barack Obama, but low turnout among Black and Latino voters worries her team. Harris won by only 6 points here last year, so this could end 3 straight Democratic governors, unseen since the 1960s. Republicans eye assembly gains to challenge supermajorities.
Now, New York City's mayoral race sounds electric. Who's leading the pack?
It's drawing huge scrutiny as voters pick a successor to indicted Democratic Mayor Eric Adams. Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani, a 34-year-old state assembly member and Democratic socialist, is the frontrunner after upsetting former Governor Andrew Cuomo in the June primary, 56.4% to 43.6%, via ranked choice voting, per NYC Board of Elections filings cited in NPR and The Hill. Mamdani runs as an independent on the Fight and Deliver party line, thanks to New York's lack of a sore loser law, as Ballotpedia and The Washington Post confirm. Cuomo attacks his inexperience, with boosts from Adams, Congressman Tom Suozzi, and even Trump, who endorsed him and threatened to withhold federal funds if Mamdani wins, though that's legally tricky under the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. Polls vary. An Emerson College PIX 11 survey gives Mamdani a 25-point lead, 50-25 over Cuomo, with Republican Curtis Sliwa at 21%. While a late October Atlas Intel poll had Mamdani at 43.9 to Cuomo's 39.4 per CBS News. Mamdani pushes free buses and universal childcare endorsed by House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, galvanizing young voters. A win makes him New York City's first millennial and first Muslim mayor, a progressive milestone per NPR's WNYC. There is also a Manhattan DA race, incumbent Democrat Alvin Bragg, who prosecuted Trump in the hush money case, versus Republican Maud Marin.
Out west, California's Proposition 50 is making waves. Explain what that's about for viewers unfamiliar with redistricting.
Redistricting is basically how electoral maps are drawn to decide congressional districts, often sparking partisan fights, Grace. Proposition 50 is a special election ballot measure, a constitutional amendment called the Election Rigging Response Act in the California Secretary of State Voter Guide, overriding prior propositions from 2008 and 2010 to let lawmakers temporarily bypass the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. It would adopt new Democratic-friendly maps via Assembly Bill number 604 for the 2026, 2028, and 2030 elections, reverting after the 2030 census. Governor Gavin Newsom called this August 21st special election via Senate Bill number 280 to counter Trump's pushes for mid-decade redraws in GOP states like Texas. The Hill and NPR polls show easy passage, potentially flipping 4 to 5 House seats to Democrats and aiding Newsom's 2028 presidential bid. KQED's Guy Marzorati calls it a counteract to Texas-style partisanship, with mail-in ballots starting October 6th and registration closing October 20th. If passed, maps implement immediately, though court reviews under the Voting Rights Act are possible, none filed yet per state docs.
And in Pennsylvania, what judicial and local races should we watch?
Pennsylvania has retention elections for 3 Democratic Supreme Court justices, David Wecht, Christine Donahue, and Kevin Doherty, seeking 10-year terms to keep the court's 5-2 Democratic majority on hot-button issues like elections, redistricting, and abortion. The Hill notes heavy spending in millions, but incumbents rarely lose. Only one Democratic ouster since 1968 per University of Virginia's Sabatos crystal ball. In Philadelphia, per the city commissioner's website vote.phila.gov, it's nonpartisan ballots for roles like Superior Court Judge with Democrat Brandon Newman versus Republican Maria Batista and Liberal Daniel Wasmer, Commonwealth Court Judge Democrat Stella Sy versus Republican Matt Wolford, up to 11 Court of Common Pleas judges, all Democratic nominees like Will Braveman and Sarah Jones, 4 municipal court judges including Democrat Amanda Davidson, District Attorney incumbent Democrat Larry Krasner versus Republican Pat Dugan, and City Controller Democrat Christy Brady versus Republican Ari Pat, plus retention for 22 judges, including those Supreme Court ones. Sample ballots in multiple languages, accessibility emphasized.
Quickly, any other key contests?
In Texas, a special election for the 18th Congressional District in Houston fills the vacancy from late Representative Sylvester Turner, Democrat. The Hill says over a dozen candidates, Democrats like Amanda Edwards, Christian Menefee, and Jolanda Jones, favored to hold the safe blue seat, possible runoff if no 50%. In Mississippi, new state Senate maps from a federal Voting Rights Act ruling give Democrats southern chances against the GOP supermajority, per The Hill, with a Supreme Court case on Louisiana's maps reheard in October. Decision expected 2026. Overall, NPR projects high urban turnout, and these could reshape Democratic strategies for 2026 midterms, testing Trump's trifecta durability. ABC News, NPR, and The Hill will have live updates as polls close tonight. Sources include The Hill, NPR with affiliates, Associated Press, New York Times, CNN, Philadelphia Board of Elections, NYC Board, California Secretary of State, Ballotpedia, Washington Post, CBS News, KQED, WNYC, WAMU, and vote.phila.gov.
Thanks for that comprehensive rundown, Ethan. Pun intended, these races are truly ballot busters.
You got it, Grace.
Good morning, folks. As we head into California's statewide election day today, we're turning our attention to a fresh ruling from yesterday that's making waves in the world of voting rights. California's appeals court has struck down Huntington Beach's voter ID measure, affirming that state standards rule the roost. Joining me now to break this down is our politics reporter, Chloe. Chloe, take us through what happened in that Santa Ana courtroom.
Thanks, Grace. Yesterday, November 3, 2025, the 4th District Court of Appeal, Division 3 in Santa Ana, delivered a published opinion that tossed out Measure A, a voter-approved initiative in Huntington Beach. This measure would have required photo identification at polling places for local elections starting in 2026. The 3-judge panel, Justices Motoke, Delaney, and Sanchez, reversed a lower court's decision from November 2024. They ruled that the measure clashed with state election law and was preempted by it, meaning state rules override local ones here. According to reporting from the Los Angeles Times, this underscores California's push for uniform voting protections, a big hurdle for local efforts to tighten ID rules amid national chatter on election integrity. And with Election Day just hours away, this is timing that's anything but a beach breeze in Surf City, USA.
Surf City indeed, Huntington Beach, with its famous surf-dotted shores, and about 200,000 residents in Orange County. Chloe, for viewers unfamiliar, what exactly did Measure A aim to do, and who pushed for it?
Right, Grace. Often called Surf City, USA for those iconic waves. Measure A, passed in March 2024 via ballot initiative, amended the city's charter to give it more control over municipal elections. Key parts included requiring valid photo ID for in-person voting in city races, expanding polling sites to at least 20 spots compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, which ensures accessibility for people with disabilities. It also allowed monitoring ballot drop boxes for rule compliance and defined an elector as a U.S. citizen, Huntington Beach resident, and at least 18 years old. Plus, it said the city charter trumps the California Elections Code in conflicts. Proponents, from the city's Republican-leaning scene with nearly 57,000 registered Republicans versus 41,000 Democrats per county data, said it would boost election security and stop fraud. City Attorney Michael Gates, as quoted in the Los Angeles Times, argued their charter city status under the California Constitution lets them handle this as a municipal affair. But no hard evidence of widespread fraud in past elections was shown, as confirmed by the California Attorney General's Office and Orange County Registrar of Voters.
That's fascinating, Chloe. Charter cities have this home rule power, but the state stepped in hard. Walk us through the legal pushback and why the appeals court sided against it.
Absolutely, a charter city means it operates under its own constitution for local matters, but not when statewide concerns like voting rights are at stake. Opposition brewed early. In September 2023, Attorney General Rob Bonta and Secretary of State Shirley Weber warned the city that this conflicted with state law, potentially curbing votes from low-income folks, voters of color, those with disabilities, seniors, and young people. After passage, 2 lawsuits hit in 2024, one from resident Mark Bixby, represented by attorney Lee Fink, claiming it broke the state elections code by adding voting barriers. The other from Bonta for the state, saying it disenfranchised voters and overstepped legislative authority on registration and access. Governor Gavin Newsom signed Senate Bill 1174 in September 2024, effective January 1, 2025, adding Elections Code Section 10005. This bans any local government, even charter cities, from requiring ID to vote or submit ballots at polls. It's a preemptive punch, affirming California's elections are already fair, safe, and secure without extra ID hurdles. State law only needs ID for registration, not polls, with penalties for fraud.
And the lower court initially dismissed it but now reversed. What was the appeals court's key reasoning, especially on fraud claims?
In Orange County Superior Court, Judge Nico Dorbedes dismissed the state's suit in November 2024, saying law wasn't clear enough. Bonta appealed, and the appeals court applied the statewide concern doctrine charter cities get home rule on local stuff. But state law wins on big-picture issues like uniform election standards to protect voting rights. They noted voter ID has historically disenfranchised marginalized groups, and patchwork rules would mess up California's electoral balance. On fraud, a core issue,
reactions pouring in and broader ripples nationally. What's the fallout, and what can Huntington Beach do next?
State officials cheered it as a voting rights win. Bonta said, quote, "Voting is the fundamental right from which all other rights flow," end quote. No city can complicate ballots. Weber agreed safeguards exist without barriers. Bixby called the fight a taxpayer money sink. City spokesperson Corbin Carson says they're reviewing for appeals. Huntington Beach has clashed with state on immigration and housing before. The ruling binds trial courts statewide unless overturned, syncing with SB 1174. No other charter cities pulled off similar rules post-bill. Nationally, it ties into debates like President Trump's 2025 order on citizenship checks, where ID fans see security, critics suppression for ID-less demographics. For next steps, under California Rules of Court petition for rehearing by November 18, 2025, 15 days from filing. If denied, final December 3rd. Then Supreme Court review petition around December 13th, but they grant only 3 to 5% for big law questions. No automatic stay on enforcement bans, but they could seek one via bond or writ, proving harm.
Chloe, that's a thorough surf through the legal tides. Thanks for breaking it all down on this pivotal morning.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. Kimberly-Clark is wiping into wellness with a $48.7 billion cash and stock bid for Kenvue, the Johnson & Johnson consumer spinoff behind Tylenol, Band-Aid, and Listerine. The tie-up would stitch together diapers and disinfectants, tissues and tinctures for a combined annual revenue near $32 billion. If approved, Kimberly-Clark shareholders would own about 54% of the new company, Kenvue holders 46%. The companies bill it as a global health and wellness heavyweight, even as Kenvue navigates investor pressure and controversy around Tylenol. Regulators and shareholders still need to bless the deal, with closing targeted for the second half of 2026, pending no paper cuts. OpenAI is getting cloud cover from Amazon in a 7-year, $38 billion pact that pours compute on the fire-powering frontier AI. The agreement gives OpenAI immediate access to AWS infrastructure. Think hundreds of thousands of NVIDIA chips to train and run systems like ChatGPT, with full capacity expected online before the end of 2026 and room to scale. For OpenAI, it's more eggs in more baskets, diversifying beyond Microsoft while securing the silicon lifeblood of its ambitions. For Amazon, it's a prime position in the AI arms and servers race, countering fears of falling behind. The price tag underscores an industry in spend then ascend mode, raising questions about whether the returns will compute. At the FDA, the medicine cabinet is in motion. Dr. George Tidmarsh resigned as director of the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research after being placed on administrative leave amid a federal probe into alleged personal conduct. The exit coincides with a lawsuit from Aurinia Pharmaceuticals, claiming he leveraged his post in a personal vendetta, including a LinkedIn broadside against one of its drugs, charges he disputes. Tidmarsh, who took the helm in July 2025, says the investigation is retaliatory after he flagged legal concerns about a new national priority voucher program, and reports suggest he may rethink resigning. The sudden shakeup at the FDA's largest division injects uncertainty into drug approval policy and doses the agency with fresh questions about ethics and oversight. In Sudan, the UN warns the war is careening from bad to worse. Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the conflict is spiraling out of control after the Rapid Support Forces seized El Fasher, a strategic Darfur city and former humanitarian hub, following an 18-month siege. He called for an immediate ceasefire, an end to arms flows, and accountability mechanisms amid credible reports of widespread executions. Hundreds of thousands are trapped, dying of malnutrition, disease, and violence. The tally is staggering: more than 40,000 killed, over 14 million displaced. The world's responsibility, Guterres suggested, is not just to watch the hourglass, but to stop the bleeding. And in Brussels, it's crunch time on climate. EU ministers are huddling to hammer out a 2040 emissions target. Brussels floats a 90% cut from 1990 levels, and to finalize a legally binding 2035 pledge ahead of COP30 in Belém. The bloc is split. Italy, Poland, and the Czech Republic warn of industrial whiplash, while Spain, the Netherlands, and Sweden push to keep the heat on ambition. Spain's Sarah Agassiz put it plainly: the EU needs to lead. Failure to clinch consensus, requiring at least 15 of 27 member states, could leave Europe arriving in Brazil with more hot air than hard numbers, diming its Paris promise and its negotiating power. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with GPT-5, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.